On today's episode of the DeRaud-Messinger Show, we're previewing and predicting number 3 Texas versus number 2 Washington. Dylan, it's the Sugar Bowl. New Orleans is about to have a party, and of course, Happy New Year's to you all. Dylan, some basic game info so that Washington and Texas fans, of course, end up at the right stadium. The game is Monday the 1st. Happy New Year's once again at 7:45 Central Time in the Caesars. Dylan, I don't know if we're
I
liking.
know.
I don't know if I'm liking the sponsorship.
I'm a
Caesars.
Mercedes guy. Be real.
I'm just a Superdome guy. I'm gonna keep it, non-sponsorship. I don't know what you were going for, but Dylan's vying for car dealership sponsorships. This game is televised on ESPN. Texas is favored by 4 points, and Dylan, last year's matchup was a 3-point Texas favorite. Of course, for Longhorns fans, they don't want to remember what happened last year. Of course, though, Bijan Robinson out, Roschon out, but still, Washington beat a pretty solid Texas team last year, even though, of course, not to this level. Of course, Dylan, once again, I must note that this is HornSports coverage of the Longhorns. Check us out at hornsports.com for all the latest on Texas. But now, Dylan, let's get into Washington. I know it's going to be a fun pronunciation guide for you. Let's start on that defense. How are you feeling?
Well, Devin, I don't know how Washington fans feel about their defense this year, albeit they've gone up against some tough opponents. They've had to face Oregon twice. You've got USC in there. Utah, has been consistently able to move the ball. The Pac-12 was pretty littered with just talent throughout that this team would have to go up against. But they're, bottom tier when it comes to just their defense in general, Devin. They're number 3 in total offense allowed at 396.9. The biggest thing is they're number 123 in pass yards allowed, 263.2. And they're last, number 140th, Devin, in opponent pass attempts per game at 40.1. So as you can imagine, if you're taking all 4 of the semifinal teams, they have the worst defense. So it's a good draw for Texas in this case. With this defense, it's really going to be about getting pressure to the quarterback because that secondary, if Ewers is clicking, is going to be torched. And that starts up front with number 8, their edge redshirt junior, Braylon Trice, Devin. He stands at 6'4", 274. He's a projected first-round pick. He's got 41 tackles on the season, 5 sacks, 8.5 tackles for a loss. He's a guy that Kelvin Banks and Christian Jones are going to have their hands full the entire time, making sure he doesn't get into the backfield because he can wreak havoc, unblocked especially. Then on the other side, Devin, you have redshirt senior Zion Tupuola Fatui. Hold your applause. He's also
All
a
right.
NFL talent player, projected day 2 or day 3, and he's got 3.5 sacks on the season with 5 tackles for loss. So these two guys, they're going to be the money makers for Washington because if Ewers has more than 3 seconds in that pocket, someone's going to get open, whether that's Mitchell or Worthy, and the secondary has not shown a capability, especially on single coverage, to hold up against that. And then up front as well at their defensive tackle spot, they have redshirt senior Tuli Latula Azanoe, Devin. He's also an NFL talent up front. So again, the front 3 for them, that's their biggest thing. And then when you look at their linebacking core, it leaves some wanting more a little bit. Middle linebacker, though, Eddie Fon Ulafashui. He's a projected day 3 pick. He's got 83 tackles on the season. I believe he's their second leading tackler. So he's also somebody that's going to be all over the field. But then when you kind of get into the secondary, they run like a Husky linebacker, better yet, a safety kind of linebacker hybrid with Michelle Powell. He's got 38 tackles. He'll be running all over the place. Then you've got strong safety redshirt junior Dominique Hampton with 93 tackles leading the team. So that's where their strong suits are back there. But again, like we talked about, statistically, teams have been able to really move the ball on them, especially throwing it.
And Dylan, talking about throwing the football and moving the ball, of course, Washington,
Yes.
the main focus, everyone who's watching this already knows this at this point, Dylan, but Washington is led by their 6-year quarterback in Michael Penix Jr., a Heisman finalist. Of course, Dylan did not get that final nod, but, in my heart, he at least deserved a worthy consideration in that race. With 4,218 passing yards, 33 touchdowns, to 9 interceptions. Dylan has mentioned this in the running up videos that we've had to this game, where he does throw the occasional, just warranted potential pick. But Dylan seems
Hmm.
like the ball has not bounced their way, and that's what happens to great teams, Dylan. You catch a little bit of luck, and you take
Yeah.
advantage of the opportunities that have been given to you. But along with Penix, of course, it must be noted, Dylan, this is doomsday for this Texas Longhorns secondary that has struggled this season. So far this year, Dylan, I got 93rd in passing yards allowed for Texas defensively. Of course, not in the upper echelon of what you want to be allowing there. But for Washington, you have 6'3 junior Rome Odunze, who is just really racking up.
He's so good at football, Devin.
He's
He's so
he's
good.
a football player that
Yeah,
everyone wants to
he is a
be.
football player.
81 catches, Dylan, in college is pretty crazy. Over 1,400 receiving yards. But the thing about Washington is you have really three wide receiver ones pretty much, Dylan. You have Jalen McMillan just came back off an injury and has been working his way to being at full strength. He has been playing recently, but Dylan, by the time the Sugar Bowl is being held, he's going to be back in the
He
mix
was
fully.
very impactful in the game against Oregon as well in the Pac-12 championship. So I think
Exactly.
the rust is coming off for sure.
Yeah, at the point of January 1st, he's going to be fine. And then the real number two in this group, though, Jalen Polk, 1,000 yards exactly on the season. I mean, it would be a shame for him to mess up that pretty mark, Dylan, but I'm sure he's going to have his fair share of receiving yards as well. But that's the receiving core. They're going to do their damage regardless. It's going to be up to Texas to really limit anything other than that. Because, Dylan, this Washington team last year didn't look like they had a running back against Texas prior to the game. But guess what? They went in, and the running backs were just great. This year, they have a transfer from Mississippi State, I believe, in Dylan Johnson. Over 1,100 rushing yards with 14 touchdowns. Has been a nice complimentary back. Of course, the Huskies have relied on that passing game, Dylan, like I said before. But he has added that threat of the run. And like you were talking about in that Oregon championship game just a second ago, the Huskies did just enough to move the chains when they needed to on the ground
Yep.
and ended up winning the game for them. The last thing I wanted to note, of course, got to give the big ugly some love when you have the
Yep.
chance. Washington O-line, Dylan tied for fourth in the country in sacks allowed, just averaging just under a sack per game, 0.85 sacks per game, which is in part credit to their offensive line, Dylan, but also in part credit to their just scheme and style of play. Washington likes to get rid of the football immediately, so it will be a difficult test for the Texas front, which has been great stopping the run, but they're going to have to get to the passing game in a short amount of time with all the quick passes that Washington just conducts. Now, Dylan, X Factors, is there any name that you're wanting to shout out here, or is this a position group?
This is really, I mean, it's really going to come down to this Huskies secondary, Devin, especially against Quinn Ewers. And I think a big part of that is going to come from one of their cornerbacks in Jabbar Muhammad. He's going to have a long day ahead of him. He's a projected day 3 pick. But again, he's going to be matched up. It's going to be interesting to see if they go a lot of zone here or man to man, depending really going to come down to him as their best corner, just going up against guys like Mitchell and Worthy. Good luck, right? But if he can kind of blanket one of those guys when he's got the chance, that's going to be incredible. And then on the other side of that, Devin, it's really comes down to Quinn Ewers against the secondary, just because, again, if he has time in the pocket and just the way that he's progressed this season and what he's been able to do, he's going to be able to hit his targets. So it's really going to be up to Washington to hold down the fort a bit, allow their front four, front three to get to Ewers and throw off his timing and accuracy, because that's going to be their best way to win this game, because guys are going to get open. And that's not like a disservice to the Husky secondary. More so, it's the talent that Texas has. These guys are going to get open, whether that's Jatavian Sanders, right? All those guys. So again, Washington's really going to have to get in his face, disrupt that accuracy, and on some occasional shots where guys are open, Ewers throws over the top or something and misses his mark.
Well, that's the interesting part, Dylan, as we talk about the Washington receiving core, and they are, I would say, unquestionably the best receiving core in the country at this point. But Texas, as a holistic group, when you include the tight ends, Dylan, and as you mentioned, I think just a second ago, you got Jordan Whittington. They have plenty of guys that are going to make a mark in this game, or at least have the potential to do so. And Adonai Mitchell and Xavier Worthy are future NFL players, and Dylan, they might be either late day one or day two guys, so
Yeah.
we'll have to see there. So it is a real, contest for both secondaries. For my X factor, I went with Penix and the wide receivers against that Texas secondary on the flip side, but really it is a battle of passing versus secondaries X factor wise, because Quinn Ewers as well. Dylan's talking about that progression. Texas can be a little bit hit or miss, but as of late, as they were rounding out the season, they were really building off of each game in a good manner, of course, for the Sugar Bowl. You want to be peaking at the right time, Dylan. The Texas volleyball team was talking about that before and after their championship win. Dylan, got to shout out volleyball. 2 in a row. But anyway, enough volleyball talk. Quinn Ewers is going to have to be on his A game, especially with some inexperience at running back, Dylan.
Yeah.
How do you think the Texas running backs, I know you got C.J. Baxter, Jaden Blue, how big of a deal are they going to have to be? Or is this going to be the Quinn Ewers, Michael Jordan game if they want to succeed here?
I mean, it's gonna be a balanced attack, right? Because Washington is going to try to overcompensate or compensate, better yet, for their secondary, because like we talked about with the talent that Texas has, you're not going to be able to cover them all day, right? So if you can mix in that play action that Ewers is good at with Jaden Blue, with Baxter, that's going to be huge. So you got to make them respect that, albeit Washington's rush yards allowed sits at about number 40 in the country at 133.8. So it's their better side, right, defensively, but also they're allowing 4.3 yards per rush, which is 84th in the country as well. So I think it's more of teams are having to throw against them a lot of the times because they're having to either play catch up or just match the pace that Washington is playing at. So Texas is going to be able to run the ball, I think, especially with this offensive line. Again, I think the strong suit is that front seven for Washington, just with Price up front. So it's going to be a little tougher than it would be throwing the ball. But I think what you're really going to miss here without Jonathan Brooks is that veteran savviness that you now do not have with Baxter and Blue. And Dylan Johnson and Brooks are similar in this case. They both know how to just go forward, run forward, get the yards,
Fall forward,
and always get the extra 2 yards. Or if they feel like they're going to lose
every
yardage,
yard counts.
they get down. Exactly.
Making
So
a negative
again,
play
that's
to
what they're
just
going to miss without Brooks.
getting to the line, big deal. Yeah, and it's going to be interesting, Dylan, because this team, Sark harps on it all year for Longhorns, has played complementary style. In this game, I mean, it's hard to pick just one player because, of course, any team, if you want to win, you want all the parts to contribute. But for Texas, Dylan, that's how it has been this year. They need all of the parts, the running game, to just do enough to, get Washington, as you were saying, playing against that run a little bit. But, credit to Longhorns, the running back university seemingly lately, Dylan, for Texas. I mean, Baxter and Blue have looked good. It's going to be on Ewers almost in this one to see how damage can be done against a talented Huskies team. Now, Dylan, we got the fun part. I'm curious to see if you've hit the lever. We got the danger level for Longhorns. How are you feeling?
I mean, I feel like this is prime time to hit 10, Devon. No matter if you have Texas winning or Washington winning, we have 10s for a reason. I feel like this one falls in the category. They're neutral field in New Orleans, semifinal. Texas had never been to a semifinal before for the college football playoff. Also, first time making the college football playoff, obviously. So a lot of firsts for Texas here going into this game. And Washington, although they have the tape from last year, they are a different team in the sense of the way they're able to win games. They can win games in a lot of different ways. And a lot of Washington fans will tell you, Penix did not look good, especially starting from the Arizona State game, where they were just rattling off close wins the entire time. His accuracy was off, and he didn't look the same, right? But yet, Washington is still undefeated, and that came down to a lot of the interception, the turnovers on defense, Dylan Johnson running the ball, and just having playmakers on the outside that if you just simply get them the ball, they will make magic happen. So It's going to be a lot for Texas to cover. This is going to be the best team offensively that they've played against. The only one that you can really compare that to is Oklahoma, I feel like, just at the point in which the season was, because let's say how it is, that was not the same Alabama offense that's now in the semifinal, right? So this is the best one since Oklahoma. And Devin, Texas lost to Oklahoma, right? With the quarterback that I think is the best one that they faced up until this point with Penix. So it's going to be a huge test for Texas.
We were talking offline. DeBoer's head coaching record, of course, now at Washington. What, he only has 11 losses, right, Dylan? I mean,
Yep.
that is insane.
Same.
This guy is just he knows how to win football games for his team and put
Yeah.
his team in the correct positions to succeed. Like Dylan talked about, Washington. Some of the games were not too pretty. I mean, let's be honest. But they're a top 4 team, and as Dylan said, they found ways to win. That Arizona State game, Dylan, that was a fun one to watch. Just with some Pac-12 after dark. Rest in peace, Pac-12 after dark. But that was a game where you're watching, and I think everyone is always rooting for an underdog. We love watching the Huskies, but you're rooting for an underdog in a game like that. But Washington, pesky. The defense came up big there. They know how to win in different ways. Johnson, defense. But then against Oregon, let's say, Dylan. Oregon doesn't know how to win those close games, and they weren't able to there. So Washington and Texas both have been in a lot of kind of gritty contests, but have come out for the most part, besides the Oklahoma loss by Texas in October, victorious.
And I think what you got to be nervous about a little bit as a Texas fan is just how much disrespect Washington has gotten the entire season.
Oh.
Even though they beat Oregon, Devin, and it's kind of similar to Texas, Alabama.
Beat Texas last season on the bowl game.
Yeah, but even though they beat Texas and they beat Oregon, they were still not favored against Oregon on a neutral field in the Pac-12 championship game where people.
And it was
I was saying Oregon would win too.
It was by a good amount of points too, right? I think it was like 8 or 9.
Yeah, they were underdogs for sure. It wasn't 3-point underdogs or anything, and they went out there and hit them in the mouth quickly, and it seemed like they were up to the task. Obviously, Oregon got back into it in the second half, but that was just because Oregon was in shock in the first half. They were not expecting this level of competition from Washington, and plus the sneaky part, and you highlighted earlier, Devin, but they have one of the best offensive lines in the country, right? So they're going to be able to have a pretty good. They're going to be able to compete with the trenches of Texas, which is Texas' strong suit, right? So Devondre Sweat, you can say all you want about how he's bigger than everybody, and he's going to be, but this is not a pushover offensive line. This is going to be one of his toughest matchups that he's going to go up against. I'm going to be curious to see how he shows up in this one. I think he'll still have a great game. But again, this Washington team, it'll surprise you with just their size and talent they have.
100% Byron Murphy and Devondre Sweat. They both, Dylan, they don't miss a session in the weight room. They also don't miss a meal. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. It's going to be a lot for that Washington offensive line to handle. Granted. But as Dylan said, this Washington offensive front has done their job. And like I was mentioning earlier, that Washington style of play offensively, it's a difficult one for opposing defensive fronts because it just happens so quick and it really wears you down after so many snaps. So stamina and conditioning, of course, after a little bit of a break, of course, coaching staffs will have these teams prepped for this game. It will be becoming a factor here. Dylan, just to mention the danger level, wrap your hand in some sort of fabric, some cloth, and punch through that danger level glass. I'm also pulling the lever for a 10 here. I mean, you save the danger levels for these games. I'm calling you out, Dylan, here. I saved my 10 for now. It's going to be a great game.
Everybody gets a 10. Everybody
gets a 10 for Dylan. But, that's the exciting part. Sometimes we got to freak out. Now, Dylan, this is the fun part and the part that's kept me up for probably 2 or 3 weeks. Predictions. What are you thinking?
All right, surprisingly, Devin, and this can be a close game, but this was not one where it was keep me up at night. This was an instant gut reaction and feeling, and there's a lot on the line here. My feelings are on the line. My gut is on the line. Is my gut right? It's a big gut game, Devin. And when I saw that Washington was playing Texas, and it was not Texas versus Michigan at the 1-4 spot, I just felt like Washington does exactly what Texas does not match up well against. We've talked about in our instant reaction after the rankings came out. But again, I still feel the same way. Nothing's come out that makes me feel otherwise. And just this case of Penix is able to throw the ball wherever he wants, the playmakers they have on the outside, the offensive line they have Dylan Johnson, who is another win condition on their team. They can win by him getting over 150 yards and Penix having somewhat of an off day. That is a workhorse back that they can ride to victory in this case. And as well, this defense, you can move the ball on them for sure, and that's going to be why this game is going to be a shootout. But I just think with the way that Washington has played, they've won in so many different ways, and they've gone through so much of the disrespect that teams will go up in. Right? They've overcome certain things in Oregon and all of that type of stuff just from the Pac-12 and how competitive the Pac-12 was, and they went in, Devon, to Eugene and beat a good Oregon State team as well. So again, this team, it's not just some
Corvallis.
Corvallis. Oh no. Oh well, I messed
Don't
that
get
one up.
those
But
Oregon fans in the chat here.
see what I mean? But that's what they've been going through. And again, I just think with the way they've been playing all year, they're well suited for this. So I've got them winning 35-31.
So Washington dub. Dylan, this was a hard one for me, and this sounds funny to say, but for the past 2-3 weeks, I've been thinking I might pick Washington here with the little contingency if Texas wins.
No contingencies. You got to
Wait for it. Wait for it. With the contingency that if Texas were to be able to upset my pick of Washington and win, that they'd win the title game. It's just that sort of matchup in my eyes, Dylan, where the strengths of Washington do not really match up well against Texas's strengths. That defensive front for Longhorns has been, almighty this season, but the running game for Washington isn't the most explosive part of their game. And we can go on a different couple, position groups like that, Dylan. But when it comes down to it, that's really what we're going to be looking at for Washington. And then on the flip side, for Quinn Ewers against that Washington secondary that has not looked very good, Dylan. It has, as we talked about earlier, statistically been worse than the Longhorns, which at times has been saying something, Dylan, because let me tell you, sometimes there's too much secondary watching if you're a Texas fan.
My favorite part of this game, Devon, is going to be how Texas and Washington try to hand the game to the other team, but the other one refuses to win the game and then gives the other team an opportunity to win. That's what I'm excited for, because both teams just seemingly play close games all year, and in Texas' case, getting out to an early lead and letting them back in, and then Washington just kind of playing the level of their competition.
100%. And then, Dylan, just to add on a little fuel to the fire, when you do the mathematical breakdown on the NCAA website and just team totals, I was really pro Washington. I was buying some gear. I went to Seattle this past summer, Dylan.
Yeah,
I put a little layaway on some purple gear. Of course, some of the greats over there. Michael Penix jersey was getting shipped. But when you look at the stats, I had to pause the shipping for a bit, save myself some of that shipping and handling fee, because the Longhorns offensively, when you look at stats, Dylan, they've done just fine. Of course, if you look at the games individually, some of these games have kept up people, given them just unnecessary heart rates. Cardiologists in Austin have thrived this season and really for the past 10 years. But my long point here is that it doesn't seem as scary as it did 2 weeks ago. Just the matchup. It's a breathable matchup, but with that said, still at a 10 on the danger level. And yet again, my brain has been saying Washington for 2 weeks, but I had to pause that Penix jersey order and go with the heart. And yet again, pick Texas here, 30-27. Now this is a scenario, Dylan, where yet again, I feel my brain is saying Washington here. And this is a sort of game where I think if Texas is able to win, I'd pick them for the championship game. But I'm almost more so leaning towards picking Washington for this matchup, as funny as that sounds. But I'm going to go Texas 30-27 just because they have a multitude of weapons as well. And they still have that complementary attack, even with Jonathan Brooks out and C.J. Baxter Jaden Blue and a talented offensive line led by Kelvin Banks, but also, the great story this year that has been Christian Jones. And the defense, yet again, they got to do their thing. And importantly, they're going to have to take advantage, Dylan, of an errant throw. Like you were saying, I feel like there's going to be a lot of dropped interceptions on both sides because Ewers has benefited from that too. I was talking about Penix earlier. Ewers has gotten away from quite a few of those. Someone is going to have to catch a dang ball. I hope the Jugs machine has been given a lot of work.
This is a big, somebody fumbled. The defender went to go pick it up, didn't fall on it. It bounced again.
Oh, 100%.
Whole scrum. It has all the makings for that. But I also wanted to say, Devin, I feel like this is a stats or program type of scenario here. Do you believe in the program? Because you believe in the program and the history leading up to it in the sense of history, like recent history and getting to this point and what you've done in the recent decade or so.
Oh, decade.
Exactly.
Okay, we're going as far as a decade.
Well,
okay.
So maybe not. So like 5 years, right? But like Washington has been here before. They have built a culture, and Texas is making a jump from a 7-5 team up into a semifinal team. There's just stages to this, and if you believe in stages and your peaks, right? This is where I start to falter with Texas, and if I'm prepared to eat my words, Devin, because I'm gonna really eat them if Washington loses.
Devondre Sweat. But I heard that he's coming over here.
Yeah, well, this is great. So again, I just feel like Washington's building up to this point. Recently, I don't want to say stats go out the window here, but there's a story to be said outside of that when you just look at it face value.
Oh yeah, and 100%. And the stats that I was referring to just a second ago, Dylan, that's more so Texas stats. When you look at Washington stats, especially offensively, of course, you're just like, oh, don't need to second guess those. And I don't know, Dylan. It's gonna be funny too, especially with the atmosphere side of this. The Alamo Bowl in San Antonio last year, of course, between Texas and Washington. The atmosphere was majority Longhorns fans, but it didn't matter. Washington came in, did what they needed to do, as we talked about. DeBoer just has his teams ready for this. In New Orleans, you're going to expect a heavy Texas lean in terms of an atmosphere. But yet again, Washington just shows up and does what they need to do, which is why I don't feel too great about this pick. But Dylan, yet again, just with teams peaking at the right time, I feel like if you're Texas, you definitely feel at least a little bit more comfortable now than you did, 4 weeks before in the season when they were hardly, competing for time against Houston. That was, not too pretty. But Dylan, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I mean, Washington has some shock to it, right? Where it's like, Washington undefeated, beat Oregon, was the national media's darling the entire season, right? So it's like
Oregon
there
twice.
was that.
You gotta
Oregon twice,
emphasize that for our Washington fans.
I know how
here.
much Texas loved Oregon all year in those debates on Twitter.
Oh.
But again, like you'd be surprised. Like Seattle's rainy and coldy, Devin. I mean, this fan base, they travel and they also live in a lot of different areas.
And they're great people,
a lot of them,
too.
So yes, just don't tell that to somebody from Washington State. They won't.
Yeah,
they won't believe that.
We have some connections there, but well, he's on his own here. I'm a pro UW fan.
It's a great college.
It's a great. They're not hearing that, Dylan. But overall, yet again, we're almost 9 minutes into this prediction section, which is showing you how excited we are about this game and how really even, Dylan, in a way. Yet again, we were getting in love with the Texas offense, but the Washington offense has been everything that Texas has and more in some ways, and then vice versa in the passing game of Washington. But the Texas passing game has been, a pleasant, I wouldn't say pleasant surprise, but in some ways a pleasant surprise this year. And then you got the defenses, Dylan. We'll see about those defenses. I don't know. But yet again, I had Texas winning 30-27, but just torn. Brain for Washington, heart for Texas. Dylan has Washington winning. But really, Dylan just wants a Michigan win, guys. Let's be honest. His Michigan Wolverines are over there.
Whoa. I'm focused right now. I'm not on the team, obviously. But as a fan, I am focused on the Rose Bowl, and I'm not thinking past that, Devin. It's time to take care of business. I hope to see Texas there. This is going to be a great matchup. But I'm excited for this one because there's enough certainty with what both teams do well, Washington, Texas-wise, and then enough uncertainty on what they don't do well to where it's like, ooh, anything could happen.
Oh, this will
I'm
be a
just so
great game.
excited.
I'm hoping for an all-timer, Dylan. I don't know if we're going to get it, but the teams are just too similar. Hopefully they're both on their A game, and we see some, battle of maybe fire and ice still, and maybe some Blades of Glory style going on here.
Mm.
But more importantly than my movie references, what do you think about this game? Let us know your score prediction down below. Don't hurt us. We're trying our best to be objective here, but more importantly, yet again, enjoy your happy holiday season, your New Year's. Hopefully, you had some nice 2024 festivities coming up planned, or if you're watching this in the new year, not that you had, but enjoy the rest of your day.